Hello, welcome back to the channel and to today's video, which will essentially be one of those cliche gear collection type of videos, which I've actually never done before. But recently I had my road trip where I did a vlog where I drove up to Broken Hill and surrounding areas taking photos and sharing them. And I realized in that video I kind of just glossed over the gear and what I used in terms of lenses, accessories, filters, and so on. And I kind of tend to do that because I like to leave the videos focused on the photography when it is about the photography and try not to make it too much about the lens and the settings and all those kind of things. But I realize that, like me, many of you guys are into that kind of thing. I'm a big gearhead, big nerd. You know, I love the technical stuff too. So yeah, I've never done one of these. So I thought, what the hell, why not? Let's just do one and share the main gear I use. Okay, so I'm going to focus on the stuff that I actually rely on the most because I have a lot of random junk that I've probably picked up in op shops or just gotten cheap just for the sake of it. So for that reason, I'll focus on the type of setup that I took on that road trip, for example. So yeah, this video might be long. All right, I'll put some chapter markers below to try and make your life easier if you just want to jump to the relevant subject or camera set or whatever it might be. Another quick disclaimer is that I have purchased the majority of this gear, but there might be a few things where I have received them for videos I've done in the past, for example, as an exchange thing. So I'll try and mention whether I bought it myself or whether it was received in exchange and just generally give you an idea of the cost. Let's get into it. Let's start with my film stuff. All right, so it's pushing film. Let's start with the film gear that I use. And within that category, the first thing I have to mention is my Leica MA. All right, so this camera is my 35mm rangefinder camera that I've been using since 2020. And I have a whole video about this that I will link because for the majority of this stuff, I probably have done a video on it, at least for the cameras. I got this in 2020 after having owned a Leica M4 for a few years. And then I wanted to upgrade to something that wasn't necessarily much of an upgrade, but I wanted to start using 28mm lenses. I wanted a camera with the hot shoe and I wanted a black Leica preferably all along. So there weren't many major reasons for it, but it's because a good deal came up on this. So I sold my M4 and then I got this for 4,700 Australian dollars secondhand, which equates to about 3,000 US dollars. So it was a pretty good deal for a Leica MA, especially considering I flipped the M4, put that money towards this, sold some other stuff. So it was just an easy flip, I guess, to get this camera, which isn't too different to any other Leica M. It's just a great camera. I love using it, so I'm not going to say too much about it. But let's talk about the lenses that I mainly use. One of them is a 35mm Zeiss Baygon f2.8 version, which is mounted on the camera now. And I've got a video on that, so you can watch that if you want. There's probably going to be a long list of videos that I'll have to put in the description because I can only put 5 cards, I think, in this one. So yeah, check the description. The next lens I use, the next most frequently used lens, I guess, would be this Voigtlander, which I'm trying to say properly now. The Germans in the comments usually tell me off for saying Voigtlander. So Voigtlander, 28mm Ultron f2, which is the earlier version. I bought this ages ago. I got it brand new. I have a whole video on this too if you want to find out more, but it's just a great all-round 28mm lens especially for street photography and just general travel because it's so compact. So great lens, still use it. I've had it for years. And both these lenses were well under 1,000 Australian dollars. The Zeiss, I got that secondhand, and with the 28mm, I got that brand new. But yeah, otherwise the lenses I use a lot and have been using a lot on my MA include the Thypoc lenses, which I did receive in exchange for doing separate videos, which you may have already seen on the channel, such as the 28mm Samara. I've adapted that to other cameras as well when I tried out the Nikon ZF. Fantastic 28mm lens, but as you can see, a lot more chunky than the Voigtlander. But that's a fantastic low light 28. And I know it's a bit redundant having both, so I might keep them, I might not. So far, I think I'll keep both. So I also use some 50mm lenses, including the Thypoc Eureka f2 and my Zeiss Sonnar 50mm f1.5, which I've had for ages. I have a video on both of those. So everything so far I have a video on. And the most recent acquisition was the Thypoc 75mm, which also I received that in exchange for making a video. And that is another fantastic lens from Thypoc. So I've generally just been loving everything from Thypoc that they've been releasing for the M mount just because they perform great. And yes, I did receive them in exchange for making reviews, but I can wholeheartedly recommend them based on the price point. for those lenses. If you want to find out more, I've got a link to them. So with that 75mm, it's made my 90mm Tele Elmarit, which I've had for ages, a little bit redundant, and I'm probably going to try and sell that one off because I don't want to have too many overlaps with my lenses. And yeah, that's my MA setup. I've made so many great photos with this camera over these last 5 years. I've shot hundreds and hundreds of rolls through it. Not 1,000 yet, but I've shot, quite a lot of film and made some of my favorite images that I've ever made, and that will be going into projects like my upcoming photo book and so on. But yeah, I won't dwell too much on that. Let's just move to the next film camera. All right, so this one you also saw me take on my road trip. It's the Pentax 645N. This is a 120 film camera. It's 645 format. It's a fantastic camera that I love and have been using since probably 2016, something like that. So almost 10 years of this. When I bought it on eBay, it was quite affordable. It was a few hundred Australian dollars, and then I was adapting a 6.7 lens to it. Eventually got other lenses like the 75mm f2.8, which is usually the kit lens, and other lenses like a 90mm equivalent, which is a 150, and this 45mm, which is equivalent of a 28-ish. I have a whole review on this too, so check that out if you want to find out more. I'll be putting some of the footage and images up on the screen. As you can see, I've created some great images with this camera. The portability for a medium format is actually not too bad. I have taken it overseas when I went on a trip, and it just opened up another level of image quality that I was able to make on that trip, and then photos that I've featured either in past videos, in an exhibition, in some print work that I have coming up, and that I'll continue to keep using. I just love this camera. So yeah, if this one breaks, I'll probably get another one. I also got a flash for this recently, which I've been experimenting with more, and it's opened up a little bit more versatility in terms of shooting street, for example, which is unusual. But yeah, the 645 format is really versatile. Even though the price has gone up a fair bit, I still think it's worth it. Maybe you can go for the older version, but this 645N I think is worth the extra money compared to the earlier one, whereas the N2 probably isn't worth the extra money as much. So if you can find a good deal on a 645N, go for it. But if you want more, check out my full video on this camera. All right, next up in terms of SLRs and film is my Nikon collection. So this now consists of a Nikon F2 and a Nikon FE. So both 35mm Nikon SLRs with the F mount. My favorite lenses to use for this setup are another Vogtländer, which is the 58mm Nokton f1.4. I've had this for ages as well. I bought this brand new. All this stuff I bought with my own money. And another great lens is the AIS 28mm 2.8. Fantastic wide angle lens, super sharp into the corners, really smooth manual focus ring. You can adapt this to digital if you want and get great results with it. And it focuses super close as well. So I highly recommend that. I do have a 35mm f2, which is the D version. This was an AFD lens. It's very plasticky. The image quality is quite nice, but I don't like how plasticky it is. And it's already kind of like broken around some of the barrel and such. I've just taped it up. But this is quite a good lens when I do want a 35 for this system. As you may know, I was shooting the Nikon FE since the beginning of this channel, and eventually just wanted to get a second body, a Nikon F body to complement it. And I wanted to go for one of the main professional line F bodies, such as F, F2, F3, and I decided to go with the F2. I have a whole video about the F2 compared to the F3 and why I went with this. So if you want to find out more, I recommend watching that one. All right, so the next thing is my Canon film camera collection, and that is the EOS film system. So not the old Canon film cameras. These are the modern electronic ones, such as this EOS 3, which I've owned also since the beginning of this channel, since 2015, actually, before I started the channel. So this is one of the cameras that got me back into shooting film when I was mostly shooting digital. And I got this for a few $100 on eBay from Japan. And I had already been using a Canon EOS mount digital camera. So it was easy for me to decide to go with this. I could use all the same lenses, and it's just a fantastic workhorse 35mm SLR with all the electronic bells and whistles and autofocus. I do also have this little EOS 500 that I picked up at an op shop for $10, 10 Australian dollars with a lens in Perth about 6-7 years ago. And that was a bargain, so I couldn't pass on that. And yeah, these cameras are just a great option if you want to be able to use all the EF glass. I do have a couple of the lenses here, but there's a lot more that I own, which I also use for my digital photography work, for shooting weddings. I've got a 70-200 and some other stuff that I couldn't be bothered putting on the table here. But yeah, as you've probably seen in a lot of other YouTube videos, cameras like this EOS 500 are really underrated for their capability and portability, especially when you have something like the built-in flash on this one, the compact form factor, combining it with the little 40mm pancake like this, and it becomes almost like a point and shoot with more capability, but better quality and much cheaper than getting something like a Contax point and shoot, for example. There's plenty of videos on these cameras, one of which I have done on the EOS 3. I'm not sure if I've done something on the EOS 500, but I have featured it in quite a few videos in the past, like when I went to New Zealand, when I did the Perfo Luminar review. So if you want samples of that, you can go and check those videos out. Sticking with the Canon theme, I'm going to move on to my digital gear and put some of that on the table. All right, so when it comes to digital, I shoot digital for a lot of my client work, whether it's weddings or corporate jobs, portraits, headshots, events, all that kind of stuff. So I've been shooting events for 10 plus years now, and then weddings for almost as long, and other random gigs. So I need to have decent digital gear. And for me, it's just always been Canon ever since I got back into photography after university. I decided to go with Canon. So I kind of ended up just sticking with the system, as you can see, even with some of my film stuff. And the main cameras I'm currently using are the Canon EOS R6 mirrorless, which is currently filming me at the moment, which is why I don't have it on the table, and a Canon EOS 5D Mark IV, which is a great SLR digital camera, so not a mirrorless camera, that I still use either as a second body when I'm shooting weddings or other events where I need two bodies, or for everyday stuff if I need it and the EOS R6 is rigged up for video, for example, or if I'm scanning film. So this is a great option for scanning film because it has 30 megapixels. It's actually more than my R6. And I've always had this macro 100mm lens as an option for it, which is great for digitizing film. So yeah, although I don't really have a video on this, you can kind of, research whatever you might need to know about a 5D Mark IV, but they're great cameras. But yeah, when it comes to the majority of my digital stuff, I usually reach for my R6. It's just a lot more versatile being a mirrorless camera, especially for video. For what you see is what you get in terms of exposure, for adapting lenses and other reasons. It's just a little bit more modern. And yeah, that's where maybe we can talk a little bit about what I use for video. So although the R6 is one of my primary cameras if I'm shooting events, one of the main reasons I got it was for shooting videos like what I'm doing right now for YouTube, and for a lot of the B-roll that you see from my YouTube video. So even with that road trip that I did, I had taken the R6 with me as my main digital camera. And what I did with that is I just chucked it in this little imitation Pelican case with the cage that you see here rigged onto it. And this is one of the foundations of my video setup. So depending on what I'm shooting for video, I'll either have the camera just naked as it is, or it could be sitting on the tripod with a screen on it like I have it now, or it could be rigged up in this cage, which is a small rig. I think it's called a Black Mamba edition of the cage, but yeah, this one I bought with my own money. I just got it through the Small Rig website because as I've gotten more into video, I wanted to expand my capability. And this is just a decent cage with a top handle that you can use for having a better versatility for adding accessories, for getting the stability of having extra points of contact or low angles with the handle there, and then again, adding other things. So we'll talk about that soon. However, let's talk a little bit more about lenses I use for video, because again, since I've been getting more into video recently, one of the lenses I've been enjoying the most and that I took with me to Broken Hill was the Thypox Samara C cinema version of the 35mm 1.4, and that's currently filming me right now. It just has a nice soft rendering to it, although it's also quite sharp, so it's a good mixture of sharpness and character. That lens I did receive in exchange for making a video, which you can check out if you want. That was just a video all about Thypox cinema lenses, about the entire set, although the only lens I got to keep was a 35mm. So based on that, I can highly recommend it if you are someone who's quite into videography. It is an M mount lens, so I use an adapter, but that actually makes it quite versatile because you could adapt it to Sony, digital, and anything else that you can adapt like an M mount to. Another lens I've been enjoying recently is this Sirui anamorphic lens, which is a 50mm anamorphic. It gives a wide angle in terms of the horizontal width. But yeah, I have a whole video on this. This one I did receive in exchange for making that video, but it was because I was really wanting to get into anamorphic and experiment with that. So if you want to find out more about the benefits of shooting anamorphic for video and information about this lens in particular, go and check out that video. And as I mentioned in that video, one of the things I've been wanting to experiment with is using an anamorphic lens, sorry for the noise, on 35mm film for stills. I think that could be a lot of fun, something that I can't quite do with this because I can't use it on my EOS 3. It's an RF mount and you can't adapt from mirrorless RF to the EOS SLR mount. But these guys have released a PL and EF mount anamorphic lens, which I'm going to try and get my hands on to do something in the future and then shoot some film with it, because I think that could be really cool as an alternative to, say, shooting a Hasselblad or something, and you get that characteristic out of focus look that you get with an anamorphic lens, including the oval bokeh and all that kind of stuff and the distortion. When it comes to non-manual focus lenses, the main lens I use for videography is this RF. So it's an RF 35mm with macro focus. So it can focus really close. This is just a great all-round lens. I probably use it the most. So at the moment, because I'm not moving around, I have the manual focus Vipoc. But for run and gun stuff, I'll usually have this rigged up to the camera because the AF is fantastic with the face detect in the R6. It just makes a good option for when you don't want to spend the time manually focusing. I didn't take this to Broken Hill, but I did use it on the last video on the channel, which was the behind the scenes vlog with Heather taking portraits in the city. I wasn't doing the video. I was lucky enough to have my friend Matt helping out with that. But when I rigged up the R6 for him, I asked him, do you want manual focus or auto? And we decided to go with auto because it would just be a lot easier at nighttime with all the moving faces. And yeah, it worked beautifully for that and any other similar situation where you want a good autofocus lens with a normal focal length of 35mm, which is really versatile for everything. Now, in terms of the rig, I have the cage as the main part, and then I also recently acquired a small rig follow focus. This is because I've been using more manual focus lenses and I wanted to experiment with follow focus. If I'm being honest with you, this was a bit of an impulse buy. I did buy this with my own money. I just saw it on sale and I thought, cool, I'll get it while it's cheap. And that shouldn't be an excuse to get things, but I don't know, I fell for the trap. But it has been kind of fun to start experimenting with for smoother transitions, and it's cool to have. And this one was fairly affordable. One of the last pieces of the rig is another recent addition, which is this newer PS099E V-mount battery. So this is actually something that has come in quite useful, and I was researching these type of batteries, including the small rig ones and this one, for a while, and it just so happened that Neewer actually reached out to me and wanted to send me one of these. So this one I did receive, but again, it's something that I was looking at getting, and this particular model does stand out in that it has this little display on the front of it. And if you're not familiar with V-mount batteries, these are some of the main uses. Obviously, you can rig it up onto a video setup like this and use it to power any of your accessories like the Shinobi screen that I have mounted on the R6 right now, or for powering the camera itself. The monitor, I use the D-Tap connector if I need that because the batteries can run out easily with that, and anything else that you might want to power. For example, it could be my little Zoom F3 audio recorder that I have here, because those things notoriously chew through AA batteries. I don't have it right now, but yeah, if I was doing a client job or something, this is just invaluable to have, where you need power for any number of devices, even if it's, let's say, an iPad for a teleprompter or a laptop or something, because it does have power delivery. It does like 15 volts or whatever, like really high voltages. And for example, with the Zhiyun X100 RGB that I featured in the last video, this comes in handy for those situations because the grip batteries can run out within an hour or so if you're using a lot of power. So we had this on hand and have a long USB-C cable to power up lights like that. It just makes it a versatile option for any number of situations where you might need external power. The D-Tap output, the USB-C, USB-A, and having that V-mount capability. And in that situation, I have this newer PS015 Pro connector, so I can just click this on and have that rigged up onto my cage setup if I want to really beef that up and power some extra things. And then it also becomes a lot more stable with all that rigged up. And then I'll usually attach this Peak Design connector here on the top of the top handle, and then have the strap around the shoulder to get a lot of stability, especially if I'm using manual focus lenses. And it just makes the R6 that much more capable when using for run and gun situations. And another great thing is when I went on my road trip, I had this with me and just used it to power up the light in my tent, to recharge stuff while I was camping, and just have one battery bank instead of taking smaller ones and having to recharge them. This one was able to last for the whole trip. So it's great for travel. It's under the limit for airplane travel as well. So yeah, can highly recommend that. You can follow the link there if you want to find out more about this V-mount battery. Okay, so that is the main stuff that I took, for example, to the Broken Hill road trip, minus the Nikon F, and the main stuff that I tend to use. So a lot of this I've owned for years, and I probably will continue to use for years. But there are some other cameras. But a lot of that is either stuff that isn't too reliable because it might have problems, or stuff that I've just picked up because it was cheap or broken or free or something like that. But stuff that is kind of working includes my Pentax 6.7, which I got for a couple $100 essentially, but it does have some issues with the shutter sticking. So I usually have to try and shoot through a roll all in one session, because if I leave it sitting, the next shot will usually result in the mirror getting stuck up. It really depends on the weather, depends on the shutter speed and how the camera feels. And I've never been able to fix it, even though I've tried some common fixes for that. However, the 6.7 is a great system. I just don't find it as reliable as the Pentax 645N that I own. And it's a lot bulkier, obviously. But when you do nail images on that camera, they are beautiful. 6.7 is a massive jump, obviously, from 645, let alone 35mm. So if I could afford it, I would own a nice copy of a 6.7 or 6.7 II, but I really don't need it necessarily. And I have one that kind of works when I want it to. I just have to know its quirks and how to use it and how to unstick the mirror if it gets stuck. And maybe one day I'll get it serviced if I can find an affordable way to do that, or more likely just get a different body, replacement body, and keep the lenses that I have for it, which include 45mm or 55, sorry, I can't remember which one, but I'll put it on the screen. It's basically the equivalent of a 28. And I have the 105 2.4 with a bit of yellowing in the lens, but it still works fine. I'm just grabbing some other honorable mentions here, one of which is this little Olympus XZ1, which is a digital point and shoot camera from around 2010, 11, 12, something like that. And it's a 10 megapixel camera, so it's actually not too bad. 10 megapixels is actually quite respectable. You can probably print up to maybe A3, but more than anything, it's just a fun camera to use and is quite portable. I have a little hood thing on it here, but without that, it's quite pocketable, and it has a CCD sensor. So this is a fantastic little point and shoot camera that I found out about through 1 Month 2 Cameras, whose channel I highly recommend. I'll put a link to that. And I probably mentioned the same thing in my video talking about digital cameras that look like film, or emulating the look of film with digital cameras. And it's actually become extremely popular since around the time I bought it. I bought this through Gumtree here in Australia, which is just an online classifieds thing, and had it shipped over from Brisbane. And I paid about $150 maybe, or $100, somewhere between those two numbers, including 3 batteries, the charger, this little hood lens cap thingy, and it works fine. It has started to play up a little bit during some of my recent travels, but then it hasn't had the issues since. So it's still going strong for the most part. The batteries don't last ages, but I have 3 of them, so that's not a big deal. And yeah, I'll put some images up on the screen. And as you can see, the look of the colors from a CCD sensor and this fantastic lens, which is an f1.8, can be really nice. So I can definitely recommend this if you can find a good deal on one, but they are getting a little bit overpriced now because there has been an increased demand for digicams and a bit of a craze on digicams. When I bought it, it was not as notorious, but yeah, if you can find a good deal on one, I can definitely recommend that. I'm not going to bring anything else onto the table right now, but some cameras worth mentioning include my Canon Demi half frame. I've had that for quite a while, and that's probably my favorite half frame camera. Even though I've used the Pentax 17 It's actually hard to pick between those two, but I do prefer the rendering from the old lens of the Canon Demi in some ways. But if I wanted sharpness, the Pentax 17 would be good. And again, there's a bit of redundancy there with having both, so I'm not sure if I would keep both of those cameras. But the one I've had for a while is the Demi, which I bought with my own money. That one was really cheap, again, at a thrift store, op shop, for about 20 bucks, I think. And the shutter was a bit stuck, but I freed it up. And I've made some really nice images with that. Good for little memory snaps and stuff like that. Whereas the Pentax 17, I received that from the distributors here in Australia when I did my interview with the Pentax guys. And I've done a few social media reels for that if you want to find out more, and a video where I shot street here on the YouTube channel. Otherwise, I do have my Samsung film point and shoot camera. So when it comes to film point and shoot cameras, I've been through a lot, because whenever I used to go to an op shop, I would pick up anything that was under $20, and I've probably been through about 20 different point and shoot cameras where I've usually flipped them after deciding whether I want to keep them or not and shooting a roll. And the one that's stayed with me the longest that I've continued to use is my Samsung point and shoot. Okay, so this little AF Slim is a fantastic point and shoot camera. It's noisy as hell, but the images are fantastic. If you want to find out more, I do have a video. It was a bit long and rambly like this one because it was a live stream. But in that video, you can skip through and find out image samples, basic details, and so on if you want to find out more. So I think I'll leave it at that. I probably have some other little random broken cameras and an instant camera like the Lomo. And I just feel like I've gone on long enough and my battery's about to die. So if you have any questions about anything in particular, ask it in the comments. I'm not really used to doing these kind of videos. I personally don't tend to watch these gear collection type videos all the way through. So I'd be surprised if you're here from the beginning. And I thank you if you've watched the whole thing. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you've all been well. Thanks for all the recent support on the channel, with my last two videos being the ultimate guide to DSLR scanning and the RGB light behind the scenes shoot with Heather. That was actually a lot of fun. A lot of you may not have seen that video, so check it out if you haven't. Heather did amazingly well with that, and it was just a great collaborative effort doing that shoot. I've got some more stuff coming up soon, so stay tuned, and I'll see you next time.